Good morning, everyone. This is the local government coordination call. We're going to give it just about 30 seconds for everybody to get logged on and then admitted from the waiting room. So we'll be starting in just a minute. Shale, how are we looking?
Looking like it's a little bit slower for folks coming in, so you're probably good to go ahead, Eric.
Okay, all right. Well, good morning and welcome. My name is Eric Bergman. I'm the new DLG Division Director. This is our 94th local government coordination call. This monthly call is provided to support local governments in navigating state and federal funding opportunities. We're coming to you live today from DOLA World Headquarters at 1313 Sherman Street. As I said before, I am the new division director. I've been here just about a month now. If we haven't met, and I think I probably know a great many of you, or we've met at some point, I was the policy director for Colorado Counties Incorporated for the last 15 years, working with county governments across the state on both advocacy and education efforts. Prior to that, I was actually here at DOLA for about 7 years, running a few grant programs and doing technical assistance in the land use and smart growth area with Charlie Unseld and Andy Hill. I hail from rural Colorado. I grew up in Teller County, and my grandfather Bob Bergman was a two-term county commissioner there back in the 1980s. So I got into this at a fairly young age as far as being in and around local government. So I'm delighted in this new role. I'm very grateful to Chantal Unfug, my predecessor, and of course, Maria DeCambra, our now 6-month in executive director here at DOLA. So I look forward to meeting many of you who I've not had the chance to meet yet, going forward at conferences and whatnot. And you can always reach us online as well. So with that, we'll start. In addition to today's webinar topic highlighting environment and built environment funding opportunities, this call provides relevant updates from DOLA and other state agencies. We'll begin with some general DOLA updates. Our state demography office is working on new state population and housing estimates, as well as population and economic forecasts. County and municipal estimates will be released for local government review by the end of June. The State Demography Office offers a series of webinar recordings about SDOs, that's the Demography Office's available resources, like how to use Census American Community Survey data for grant applications and other research. The recordings are posted on the State Demography Office webpage under the heading Trainings and Webinars. As far as our Division of Housing update, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has recently announced that Division of Housing will receive $4 million less in Home Investment Partnership Program, that's the HOME program, and National Housing Trust Fund, that's HTF, than has been allocated in recent fiscal years, resulting in a reduction in gap funding available from those sources than previously anticipated. In fiscal year 24-25, Division of Housing will prioritize CHAFA's 2023 tax credit awarded projects when considering rental housing development gap funding and applications. We anticipate that limited gap funding resources will be available from Division of Housing for non-LIHTC rental projects on and after December 1st, 2024. We will communicate application rounds and estimated award amounts as funds become available. Division of Housing is planning new application and funding cycles in accordance with House Bill 24-1308, including funding opportunities related to home ownership. Division of Housing anticipates publishing the approved Proposition 123 home ownership program guidelines in the coming weeks and will release more details in future communications regarding timing of upcoming application cycles for home ownership programs. Division of Local Government update. We look forward to seeing many of you at this year's Colorado Municipal League Conference next week up in Loveland. DOLA will be presenting a couple different sessions. One or two of them will be on Wednesday, June 19th. One is called What's New at DOLA, that will discuss impacts and opportunities from the legislative session that will be presented by Marie DeCambra, our executive director. The other one on Wednesday will be Casey McPherson presenting with Robert Sheasley, who is general counsel for CML, and they're going to be going over all of the new land use and housing bills that came out of the session. That is a CLE session, continuing legal education. So probably be a lot of city attorneys, but if you're interested in that one as well. And then on Friday, our DOLA regional managers will be conducting a session regarding opportunities to strengthen your community. So hopefully I will see many of you up in Loveland next week. DOLA, individually and in partnership with other state agencies, has begun planning for an efficient implementation of recently passed land use legislation. These are the bills on that I mentioned before that this session at CML will deal with. The transit-oriented communities, this is the accessory dwelling unit legislation, and also the large kind of affordable housing bill that will include some housing needs assessments for communities across the state, as well as some new your master plan elements that will be added on. There's grant programs associated with all three of these, and we are in the process now of beginning to implement those. Keep an eye on our website and other communications forthcoming on guidance, tools, stakeholder engagement opportunities, etc. The Community Development Office here at DLG is hosting an interactive virtual peer exchange series for local governments working on affordable housing strategies and land use issues on the third Thursday of each month. You can register for the series on the website or on the link we provided to add the Zoom event to your calendar and receive updates about future scheduled topics. We also wanted to give a friendly reminder to all counties, municipalities, and special districts that the NOFA application is continuously open for the local match for federal IIJA, that's the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or LOMA program. This program is to be used for local governments to support their non-federal match requirement when they are applying directly to the federal government for the federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Act program. Details for this program can be found on the link provided in the chat. Finally, the USDA announced awards for round 2 of the Community Wildfire Defense Grant in May, with awards for Colorado projects totaling just under $28 million, approximately 11% of the round 2 funding. Congratulations to our Colorado communities who were recipients. We can now dive into our Pathways webinar, which will be introduced by Shale Sabo from the Colorado Resiliency Office. Our topic today is grant application best practices. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for all those wonderful updates, Eric. Yes, so as mentioned, we are going to jump into our Pathways webinar, which is helping local communities to navigate state and federal funding opportunities. So today we have a great lineup of speakers. You'll first hear from Braden Nicholson from CDPHE, who is our Climate Resilient Communities Manager, who's going to speak to several built environment related funding opportunities through IIJA. As well as some state opportunities. And then we will also hear from David Snap, also with CDPHE, speaking to the Swiffer funding. And finally, we will have Kathleen Knox from CDPHE, who will co-present with Helen West from City of Cortez to speak about the Brownfields program update. And then we can also hear from City of Cortez on their community engagement strategies in doing a Brownfields redevelopment project in their community. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it off to Braden.
Great, thank you, Shale. So as Shale said, I'm Braden Nicholson. I'm the Climate Resilient Communities Manager at CDPHE. Next slide, please. So I work within our Healthy Communities unit, and our unit collaborates across the department and across multiple sectors to advance evidence-based policies and environmental changes to impact community health across the lifespan. We work to increase capacity of local public health agencies, local governments, and state partners to address climate-related health impacts. We also support designing communities in a way that promote public health and advance health equity. And we also work to address transportation safety and increase access to activity-friendly routes to everyday destinations. Next slide, please. So on the screen, you will see examples of elements we consider as part of supporting healthy, equitable communities. And today I will share funding opportunities to support safe and connected transportation systems, environmental quality and sustainability, and parks and green spaces. Next slide, please. So the first funding opportunity is the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, or SS4A. And this includes $5 billion across 5 years between 2022 to 2026 to prevent roadway injuries and fatalities. And it includes a focus on bicyclists and pedestrians. The planning and demonstration grant is currently open to develop, complete, or supplement an action plan to achieve the grant goals. And the deadline to apply is August 29th. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have additional questions. Next slide, please. So some example projects to apply for the SS4A grant include developing safe routes to school or safe routes to parks action plans, on-street community engagement at bus stops and other events, quick build projects such as curb extensions and crosswalk enhancements, and traffic calming and data collection. Next slide, please. The next grant is the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, Inflation Reduction Act Community Change Grant Program, which includes approximately $2 billion in funds for community-driven initiatives that benefit disadvantaged communities. This focuses on reducing pollution, increasing community resilience, and building community capacity. The deadline to apply is November 21st, and you can contact the EPA email shown at the bottom of the screen. Next slide, please. A little bit more information around this grant. There are 2 tracks. The first track is the Community-Driven Investments for Change, which includes 10 to 20 million for the amount per award. And then track 2 is focused on meaningful engagement for equitable governance, which is 1 to 3 million for the amount per award. Eligible applicants to apply for and use the EPA grant funding can also receive technical assistance through their Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights in all stages of the grant, including pre and post award. And this includes application support, capacity building, project planning, and more. Next slide, please. Diving a little bit deeper into track 1, that's the Community-Driven Investments for Change. These must meet the following objectives, which include increasing community climate resilience, reducing local pollution and improving public health, centering meaningful community engagement, building community strength, reaching priority populations, and maximizing integration across projects. Examples include mitigating climate and health risks from urban heat islands, extreme heat and wildfire events, community-led air and other pollution monitoring, prevention and remediation, workforce development to reduce greenhouse gases and air pollutants, and reducing indoor toxics and indoor air pollution. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide. Diving a little bit deeper into track 2, which is the meaningful engagement for equitable governance. This focuses on building capacity of communities to address environmental and climate injustices and giving disadvantaged communities a meaningful voice in decision-making. Examples include educational and training programs, environmental advisory boards, and collaborative governance activities as well as participation in governmental funding and budgeting processes. Next slide, please. So moving on to state grant opportunities, the Colorado State Forest Service currently has their Urban and Community Forestry Grant Program open, which focuses on growing the tree canopy, specifically in disadvantaged areas of Colorado. And examples include tree planting, pruning, removal and watering, capacity building, as well as tree inventories. And again, as I mentioned, this grant program prioritizes disproportionately impacted areas. And this is identified through the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool under the Federal Justice 40 Initiative for this specific program. The 2024 grant cycle is the first of 3 rounds of funding over the next 3 years. And the Colorado State Forest Service has $1.6 million available in this first year. The deadline to apply is July 31st, and please feel free to join the Q&A sessions on Mondays at 4:30 p.m. if you have additional questions. Next slide, please. CDPHE has an environmental justice grant program that focuses on measuring, preventing, or reducing pollution in disproportionately impacted communities. And disproportionately impacted communities for this grant aligns with our state definition of disproportionately impacted communities. And I refer you to Colorado EnviroScreen to understand where the disproportionately impacted communities within our state are located. I have provided a link to examples from Cycle 2, the grant recipients. So if you want to check those out and get a few examples, feel free to go there. Cycle 3 of the request for applications will release sometime this fall of 2024. And the Environmental Justice Advisory Board is meeting on July 12th in Durango to discuss Cycle 3 details, including the length of the grant cycle, the total funding that will be available, and the number of organizations that will be funded. Once those details are finalized, they will be posted on our CDPHE webpage, which is linked on this slide. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to contact Gabby, our environmental justice grant specialist. You can also see the Colorado EnviroScreen tool link in the chat. Thank you, Shale, for including that. Next slide, please. So the Colorado Department of Transportation has their Safe Routes to School grant program. And the purpose of this is to increase safe walking and bicycling to school for kids of all ages and abilities. And this grant program includes both infrastructure and non-infrastructure funds. Example of infrastructure grants include bicycle parking facilities, bicycle and pedestrian counters, signage, on-street bicycle facilities, off-street bicycle and pedestrian facilities, street striping, sidewalk improvements, and traffic calming devices. For the non-infrastructure grant, this includes bicycle and pedestrian subject lesson plans, bicycle rodeos, crossing guard programs, public awareness campaigns, and safety programs. For this grant, the location of the project must be within a 2-mile radius of the identified school or schools. The grant is anticipated to be open this August, and the grant is typically offered every other year. The Colorado Safe Routes to School Program Manager, Melissa, will be offering 20-minute individual consultations where she can answer any questions that you have and talk through your project a little bit more. And Spanish interpretation is also available during those, so feel free to reach out to Melissa directly to schedule that. Next slide, please. So the last state grant program that I will be touching on is the Colorado Department of Transportation's Revitalizing Main Street program. And the purpose of this is to enhance active transportation safety and strengthen the connection of people to main streets and central economic hubs. The funding amount is up to $250,000, and a 10% match is required. Applications are reviewed on a rolling basis every other month, and examples of projects for this grant include sidewalks with ADA ramps, street trees, landscaping buffers next to sidewalks, pedestrian level street lighting, bike racks, converting unused space into a downtown plaza. There are office hours that you can attend every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. And I have also provided the program website link and the Main Street email if you would like to reach out to them if you have other questions. Next slide, please. So that is all I have. Thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out to me directly at my email, which is braden.nicholson@state.co.us. Now I will be turning it over to David.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is David Snap. I manage the Solid Waste and Materials Management Program at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And in our program, we typically, regulate landfills, make sure they're compliant with our rules and the state statute. And then we also do a number of other things, such as implement the waste tire program for the state. We calculate the state's recycling rate, diversion rate. And so we do a number of things in our program. And I'm just going to go quickly over the solid waste infrastructure for recycling grants, waste tire grants, and then I also have a brief mention in here about our closed landfill remediation grant program that is starting up this next fiscal year. So as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the EPA, next slide, please. As a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the EPA put out the solid waste infrastructure for recycling grants. So there were two main components of this, which one was a local application process, a local government application process, which has passed. And actually the state application process has passed as well. I believe that one local government in Colorado, it was Chaffee County, they received money for to build a recycling facility under the EPA Swiffer grants. And so here in the solid waste program at CDPHE, we are going to look to update the statewide integrated solid waste management plan. And so part of the goal of these grants is to improve post-consumer recycling, improve waste diversion, and to help local governments. So next slide, please. With that, we are going to update our integrated solid waste management plan to create a disaster debris management template for local governments to use. A lot of the disasters we see in the state, whether it's a fire, flood, the first thing that local governments do is look to manage some of that debris to get it out of waterways or to remove, make homes safer for folks. So we're looking to get some guidance out there and allow, create that template for local governments as a part of this. We're also going to evaluate all the current waste diversion policies statewide and see what kind of improvements or recommendations a contractor. So we are going to contract out this development of this plan. And then we're also going to look at the future generation of renewable energy waste streams and electronic vehicle batteries. So, one of the things we see across this part of the country is wind turbine blades that are abandoned in agricultural fields. And, like a lot of the landfills on the Eastern Plains are just not equipped to handle that type of waste stream. So, the other issues are solar panels. And then, we're worried about EV batteries as well. What are disposal facilities going to do with those as we start to see them expire and meet their end of life? So that's what we're going to use the integrated solid waste management plan for to develop. And next slide, please. And one program that we implement right now, and actually the governor just signed a new bill that would create an enterprise out of part of this program, is our waste tire program. So we have typically in better years with spending authority, but now it's transitioning to an enterprise. We have money to fund illegal waste tire cleanup. So we will, if a local government comes to us and says, hey, this property has a ton of tires, we want to have them cleaned up, we will contract that out on behalf of a property owner. If it's an illegal site where there's been an operator illegally taking tires, we might put a lien on that property to recoup that cost. We also will do, this is a really good one for some of our more low population communities, is we will send a trailer out and just fund it in a local tire collection event. And usually we can do that pretty easily. We just need a little bit of lead time on it, maybe 3 to 5 months of lead time. But we'll send a trailer out, and you can have your community cleanup day where you have maybe a paint collection event on one side and then a tire event on the other, and you can I guess have a good event like that. We also, a big thing that we do is we do contract with local environmental health agencies, and we will fund staff at those agencies to do waste tire inspections on our behalf. We only have 4 inspectors for the state. And so that's been a really popular program. There's a number of counties that participate in that. So, please reach out if you see value in, funding, a 10th or a quarter FTE to do waste tire inspections in your part of the world. We also provide rebates for the end use of waste tires. So when a company, like let's say that you're building a playground and you want to use shredded tire material on that playground, we will reimburse you up to some amount of that cost. And right now, I think it's $50 a ton for like a playground material, or it might be $25 a ton. But we will reimburse for some of that. So that's another really popular program. And it really generates a lot of tire recycling in the state. Next slide, please. So in terms of the waste tire cleanup program, I just wanted to show, the last couple of years, we did hit some spending authority issues, but again, this program is going to be moved into an enterprise, so we won't have that issue. But over the last couple of years, here's just a chart to show you, some of, the cleanups that we've done across the state. Next slide, please. And these are the counties that we have under contract, or have a contract with us, and they do inspections on our behalf. And this is a really good program for us because the county and a lot of the local environmental health know the areas better. They go out to tire shops and they just make sure that tires are being stored correctly, that the tire shops are paying the retail fee, and then they also will scout out and find illegal disposal sites for us and then share that information with us, and we can follow up. Next slide, please. And just here's some contact info for you all if you want to learn more about the waste tire program. Next slide, please. And finally, last legislative session, so I guess 2 legislative sessions ago, House Bill 23-1194 was passed. And the idea is that now we at the department have set up a grant program that will help local governments that have closed landfills, that they have known issues. We can provide grant money to help remediate some of those. So these are landfills that were owned and operated by local governments. So we plan to have the first RFA out here in July, and we were given $15 million for this program, and we'll have an annual report and make recommendations for any more funding we might need in the future. But this, we're waiting to see how popular this is, but there's been a lot of need, and we recognize that a lot of landfills closed, in 1985, and, they still might have issues. So we're hoping to see a lot of success with this closed landfill remediation grant program. And Taylor is administering that program for us. So there's her contact info if you need it. And I believe that was all for me. Yeah, thanks. And certainly welcome to answer any questions. And I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen Knox now.
Thanks, David. Hi, I'm Kathleen Knox. I'm a CDPHE Brownfields project manager in our remediation program within the Hazardous Materials and Waste Management Division. And I wanted to give a Brownfields funding update. So next slide, please. So just a quick overview of our Brownfields program. And so Brownfield sites are any sites that it's property with actual or perceived environmental contamination, and that real or perceived contamination makes it very difficult to redevelop the property. And so our Brownfields program works with local governments, nonprofits, and some private entities to facilitate the redevelopment, reuse of those properties. And so we have a lot of resources available. We have technical assistance and coaching. So communities can come to us with those properties, and we can talk about what assessment might be done, or what are the barriers to getting it redeveloped, and how we can help find resources and work through that process. We have a grant program to assess all those properties. And then we have funding through state grants, our tax credit program, and our revolving loan fund program for cleanup of those properties. Next slide, please. And so coming up in fiscal year 2025, we have some new funding opportunities as well that I wanted to touch on. And so IIJA funding from IRA, as well as recent state legislation, has given us a couple of new resources. So we're anticipating through our Brownfields program to receive $1 million of supplemental funding that we can use for assessments and cleanup grants, as well as House Bill 241116 is extending our Brownfields tax credit through 2030. And so annually we'll have $5 million of credits available. And in particular, the focus has been on rural areas. So rural areas get a higher credit than more urban areas. And then House Bill 1457 is creating a pilot grant program for asbestos and lead-based paint abatement. Next slide. And then touching on that a bit more. So this new grant program for lead-based paint and asbestos will provide about $200,000 for grants to local governments in fiscal years 25 and 26. And a key part of it is that it does not require the local jurisdiction to own the property, which is a big deal when it comes to applying for cleanup grants. And it'll follow our existing regulatory process. And the application is still under development, but we're expecting that to come out later this year. Next slide, please. And then our statewide assessment grant, one of the grants we currently have in place, we're working with 4 Colorado communities to provide assessment and community planning in Longmont, Lyons, Cortez, and Firestone. And so we're also seeking to apply for another grant through EPA for fiscal year 2026. And so we're looking to partner with some new communities if that's something your community might be interested in. Next slide. And so that's all I have, just kind of briefly on our resources, and I'll pass it over to Helen West to touch more on the statewide assessment grant.
All right, so I'm Helen West. I always feel weird keeping my video off, so I just wanted to turn it on and say hello. I think now I'm going to turn it off. I think also my boss, Rachel Marchbanks, is here. We are the Community and Economic Development team at the City of Cortez, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the statewide assessment grant that we have through CDPHE. And there's Rachel. Next slide, please. So in October of 2022, we, along with the 3 other communities that Kathleen mentioned, were awarded the statewide assessment grant through CDPHE. And I just want to say what an incredible partner CDPHE has been, and also our contractors, Stantec. They've just been wonderful to work with, and I highly recommend this grant to any community that is interested. So the grant runs through September of 2027, but we actually think we will run out of funding before then, just with all the work that we have been doing. And you can see a list of some of the program highlights and impacts that our community has had because of this grant. I'm going to touch a little bit more in the next slide about what that means for Cortez. But the bottom 2 are things that are kind of still in the works or have passed. So as part of this grant, we are also potentially going to conduct a market analysis or market leakage study, which could be very beneficial for Cortez to know. And the grant also helped us go to the Colorado Brownfields Conference last April. Next slide. So particularly for Cortez, Stantec conducted an inventory of our potential brownfield properties, and they found 21 brownfield or likely brownfield sites in our community, and we have the addresses and all the information for each of those. We've also conducted a lot of phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessments. So we've completed 5 phase 1 environmental assessments. 1 is in progress. And actually the right-hand side shows the Mesa Verde Inn in Cortez, which is underwent a phase 1 and is undergoing a phase 2. It's in the process of a phase 2. So that's an example of one of our properties. We've also completed 1 RBM survey and have 1 to 4 in progress. I'm sorry, that number is a little shaky. I'm not entirely sure. And for those of you who don't know, an RBM survey is a regulated building materials survey. And so this is a physical study where samples of potentially hazardous building materials are collected and tested to confirm if they are actually present. So that's materials like asbestos, lead-based paint, polychlorinated biphenyls, and other hazardous substances. We have 1 pending application for these environmental assessments. And so that means we've had 6 individual properties undergo some kind of assessment in the past 2 years. And then we're conducting an area-wide plan study, which is what I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But that's a picture of the Johnson Building, which is another project, another property that we are assessing and talking about revitalization. Next slide, please. So this is more about our area-wide plan, and this has really been an exciting project for Cortez, and kind of highlights that this brownfield grant is not just for brownfields, it's for that community planning and data and community engagement. So the survey or the plan is really about that section that you see highlighted in the turquoise circle. So this section of South Broadway is our gateway from New Mexico and Utah. It's really our southern gateway into Cortez. And it used to be a really vibrant part of Cortez in the 60s and 70s. We have several hotels that sprang up around the auto tourism boom of that time period, but have since fallen into kind of disrepair, dilapidated. There's not a lot going on down there. Next slide. So Stantec, through this grant, our contractor Stantec is helping us conduct this area-wide plan study. And so this is just kind of a general outline of the things that you can get from an area-wide plan study. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So next slide. Part of the study, we conducted a survey of our residents in April, and we got 973 responses, which for a town of 9,000 people is a pretty good response rate. So we know that our community feels very passionately about South Broadway. And this is just an example of the data that we got. And we can use this data going forward to go after different cleanup grants, different revitalization grants, but also talk to our partners with honest, hard, cold data. So CDOT, local regional partners, Region 9, we can talk to them about what we need with South Broadway and so have some numbers to back up what our thoughts are. So this is just an example that many of our residents find that South Broadway is not very clean, not very safe. And then that far right-hand bubble, walking and biking on South Broadway is really, really, really not safe. Next slide, please. We also asked our residents what kind of things they would like to see in South Broadway. And this really helps us as economic developers either go after specific businesses, talk to potential entrepreneurs about the types of businesses, or if a developer comes directly to us, we have some data to say, yes, our community wants this, or yes, our community doesn't. So this is just an aggregated data set of what kind of land uses our community wants to see on South Broadway as we think about revitalizing that area. Next slide. So that's kind of the end of my spiel. I really wanted to highlight that this grant can do a lot of things. So I hope that you saw that. And if you have more questions for either Rachel or I, our emails are there. Or if you just want to explore on your own more about our projects, you can go to our website. The left-hand site is just the generic Cortez government website. On the right-hand side, that link will take you directly to our revitalization initiatives and brownfield grant information. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful speakers today. As a reminder, we are now in the question and answer portion. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature. If you want to ask your question out loud, you can actually use the raise hand feature. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, there should be an option there So if you want to ask your question verbally, go ahead and click that and we can elevate you to be able to speak. Otherwise, I'm not seeing any questions quite yet, so we'll give it just another minute. Looks like Eric might have a question. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Shale. Hey, this is a question for Helen West down in Cortez. Do you know Mark Walker? Because I worked with Mark Walker on a whole bunch of brownfield stuff when he was at the health department way back in the early 2000s. I know he retired and I think he lives in Cortez. So I just found it delightful. You guys have all these great successes, and that he actually is living down there in retirement. So
I don't personally know him, Eric. I moved back permanently in 2018. So I think that was a little bit before my time. Rachel,
yeah.
do you know Mark?
No, I don't, but it sounds like somebody we need to look up.
Excellent. Well, anyway, thanks for that was out of left field, but I worked a lot on brownfield stuff with him back in the day, and he was just a great advocate. So congratulations on all your success.
Good to know. Thank you.
So we're all about making connections here too. So we do have a question for Kathleen. Could you share any more about the communities interested in the grants from House Bill 24-1457?
Yeah, so we're still waiting on some additional information about when the program is going to be live. But yeah, communities are welcome to reach out to myself or Doug. I believe our contact information is on the slide. And as we know, we can stay in conversation, and as we know more, we can keep you updated.
Great, thank you. Veronica, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, just real quick also about brownfields. So the process is CDPHE works with the awarded communities. And then as far as assessing properties, is this individual property owners that reach out to the city?
It can be a little bit of both. So for our statewide assessment grant, it's definitely been both where, like Helen mentioned, our contractor was able to identify some possible brownfield properties throughout the city. And so those property owners, or the city, reached out to those property owners to see if they were interested in participating in the grant. And sometimes property owners will see information about the grant and reach out to us and work together. But for our other programs, just our general assessment program, not the statewide assessment program, usually it's properties that local communities or nonprofits are particularly interested in, and they'll come to us with those.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. We do have a question. Helen,
I just wanted to tag on to Kathleen for our statewide assessment grant. We do reach out, like I have been actively engaging with our property owners to make sure they know about this opportunity for the assessments. And we have had people contact the city and say, this property should get cleaned up. But it always has to come through that property owner, but we will reach out directly to them to offer this opportunity, but not persuade them to do anything that they don't want to do with their property.
Great, thank you. So we do have a request from the audience to ask a question. Zongyan, I'm going to allow you to speak right now. If you want to unmute yourself, you should be able to ask.
Yeah, this is Zongyan Zhu, living on Loveland. I have two questions. It's a general public issue. One is about property tax exemption for senior citizens. The current policy is you have to living in the property and occupy the property for more than 10 years, and then you are 65 years or older. So I have, right, this year is 67 years old. I used to have this property tax exemption last year when I live in the previous house, because I live in that house more than 10 years. But since last year I moved out, downgraded to another house, I lost this benefit. So as I know, two weeks ago, the state governor signed a new revision law to revise the senior citizen status for property tax exemption. I just want to learn what's the update. So I have living in Colorado for 29 years, and then I pay county tax for property tax for 26 years, and I pay Lamar County tax for 22 years. So because I get old, I don't need a bigger house. I downgrade to a smaller house last year, and but I lost the tax exemption benefit. I hope I can keep my benefit because I have been paid property tax to Lamar County for 22 years. I didn't switch to other county. I didn't to switch to other state. And I keep the same state, same county, more than 10 years, just because I downgrade another house. I hope I can keep the property tax exemption. Hello?
Yeah, thank you, Zongyan. So I don't know if anyone on this call is going to be able to answer your question today. If you want to drop your email in the chat, we'll get you connected to one of our folks within DOLA who can help better answer that question.
What's the email address?
Or if you want to drop a phone number too.
Okay. You tell me the phone email address by phone number?
Yes, if you could put it in the chat, we will follow up with you.
Oh, email address, I put in my email, ng.zhu
Veronica, this is just a question for making, did Matt's question in the chat get answered by Kathleen?
Did, yeah.
at gmail.com. After that, I have another question, and phone number is 970-402-8389. Songjian.zhu@gmail.com 9740. Okay.
Thank you, Zongyan. We'll follow up with you after this call.
A second issue, because my new house charged me more than $3,000 per year for metro district tax. I didn't know before I buy this. I don't think this is reasonable. I pay our tax more than $6,000 to Lamar County, but I talked to Lamar County assessor. They said they only collect tax for metro district and convert our money to metro district. I was told that this money covered pipeline, electronic, and the road, build new road. I don't think this is reasonable because for new district, the developer and the builder should pay the road, pipeline, and the electronic line. I cannot ask the residents to pay every year more than $3,000 for that. So I hope you guys is a lawmaker or appraiser or assessors. So it's can transfer my voice to the governor. This is not reasonable, and also this will block the people, the buyer, to buy the house if they have metro district tax. So this limit the housing marketing is not good for the housing marketing. They should be paid by developer or builder, cannot pay by the residents.
Thank you for your questions, Zongyan. Yes, we hear you, and we will definitely follow up with you after this call. Unfortunately, everyone that's on this call is speaking to environmental health programs for local governments. But we will definitely, we have your contact information written down, and we got your questions, and we will follow up.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or on the Q&A, but I think If not, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Eric. And just really quickly, as a reminder for folks, you can find all of our previous recordings on coloradocoresiliency.com. I put that in the chat a little bit earlier. And then within a week, you'll get all the links and the recordings from this call. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Eric.
Thank you, Shale. I want to thank all of our speakers and participants for joining us today. Look for a follow-up email with the meeting recording and materials, as well as the Q&A will be sent out as well. Some of the questions and answers that came in today. The funding topic for the next local government coordination call on July 17th is Bipartisan Infrastructure Act broadband funding. We hope you can join us then. With that, we'll go ahead and close. I wish you all a good weekend. Stay cool, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you on July 17th for our next coordination call. Thank you. Cheers.